Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. The night is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a hell breath. The stars above us are scattered like shards of light, broken and beautiful, and the air carries the faint scent of earth and dew. It's the kind of night that makes you want to whisper, to share secrets that feel too heavy to carry alone. So, here we are, you and I, sitting beneath this vast, endless sky. And I want to tell you a story, not just any story, but one that has been living inside me, waiting for the right moment to be spoken aloud. This is a story about emptiness, about what it means to empty your mind, to let go of the things that weigh you down, and to find something luminous in the space that remains. It's a story about the difference between toxic motivation and true inspiration, and how one can feel like fire while the other feels like the quiet warmth of the sun. It's a story about how I learned to tell the difference, and how, in the process, I found a way to breathe again. I used to think that motivation was everything, that if I just pushed harder, if I just gritted my teeth and clenched my fists and willed myself to keep going, I could achieve anything. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. My sleepless nights a testament to my dedication. I was running on fumes, but I told myself that was the price of success. That was what it meant to be driven. But here's the thing about running on fumes. Eventually, you run out. And when I did, it wasn't dramatic. There was no grand collapse, no moment of reckoning. It was quieter than that. It was waking up one morning and realizing I didn't want to get out of bed. It was staring at my to-do list and feeling nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. It was the realization that I had been chasing something, success, validation. I'm not even sure what, and it had left me empty. I didn't know what to do with that emptiness. It felt like a void, a black hole that threatened to swallow me whole. So, I did what I had always done. I tried to fill it. I filled it with work, with distractions, with anything that would keep me from sitting still long enough to feel it. But the emptiness was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for me to stop long enough to notice it. And then, one day, I did. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that feels like it stretches on forever. I was sitting on my porch, a cup of tea in my hands, and for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working. I wasn't scrolling through my phone. I wasn't even thinking about what I needed to do next. I was just sitting there, watching the leaves sway in the breeze, listening to the distant hum of the world. And that's when it hit me. The emptiness wasn't something to be feared. It wasn't a void to be filled. It was a space, a quiet, open space where I could finally breathe, where I could finally hear myself think, where I could finally feel. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of something. The beginning of a journey that would take me to places I never expected, both within myself and in the world around me. It was the beginning of learning how to empty my mind, how to let go of the things that no longer serve me, and how to find inspiration in the stillness. Let me tell you about the first time I truly understood what it meant to empty my mind. It wasn't during a meditation retreat or a spiritual awakening. It was in the middle of a crowded subway station. Of all places, I was on my way to work, caught in the usual rush of bodies and noise, when something inside me just stopped. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and suddenly, the chaos around me didn't matter. The noise, the hurry, the stress, it all faded into the background. And for a moment, there was nothing but silence. In that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from everything being perfect. It was the kind of peace that comes from accepting that things are imperfect. And that's okay. It was the kind of peace that comes from letting go. That moment didn't last long, maybe a few seconds, maybe a minute, but it stayed with me. It was a glimpse of something I hadn't known I was missing, and it made me want to find it again. The journey to empty my mind wasn't easy. It wasn't a straight path, and it wasn't always clear. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I was doing it wrong, if I was wasting my time. There were moments when the emptiness felt too big, too overwhelming, and I wanted to fill it with anything: noise, distraction, even pain, just to make it go away. But I kept going. I kept sitting with the emptiness, even when it was uncomfortable. I kept letting go of the things that no longer served me, even when it was hard. And slowly, something began to shift. I started to notice things I hadn't noticed before. The way the light filtered through the trees in the morning. The sound of my own breath, steady and calm. The way my thoughts would come and go, like clouds passing across the sky, without me needing to hold on to them. I started to feel things I hadn't felt in a long time. Joy, not as something I had to chase, but as something that was already there, waiting for me to notice it. Inspiration, not as something I had to force, but as something that came to me when I least expected it. And I started to understand something I hadn't understood before. That emptying my mind wasn't about achieving some perfect state of stillness. It was about creating space, space to breathe, space to feel, space to be. There's a quote I love from the poet Rumi: "The wound is the place where the light enters you." I've thought about that a lot over the years, and I've come to believe that the same is true of emptiness. The emptiness is the place where the light enters you. It's the place where you let go of the things that no longer serve you. And in doing so, make room for something new. That something new might be inspiration. It might be peace. It might be a sense of connection to something greater than yourself. Whatever it is, it's something that can only come when you're willing to sit with the emptiness, to let it be what it is, and to trust that it has something to teach you. I want to tell you about the night I realized I had found what I was looking for. It was a night much like this one, with the stars above and the world quiet around me. I was sitting outside, my mind as still as the air, when I felt it, a sense of clarity of wholeness that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't that everything in my life was perfect. It wasn't that I had all the answers. It was that, for the first time, I was okay with not having all the answers. I was okay with the messiness, the uncertainty, the imperfection. I was okay with the emptiness because I had come to see it not as a void, but as a space where anything was possible. In that moment, I understood something I hadn't understood before. That true inspiration doesn't come from pushing yourself to the brink. It doesn't come from toxic motivation, from the constant need to prove yourself, to achieve, to succeed. True inspiration comes from within. It comes from the quiet, open space you create when you empty your mind. It comes from the stillness, the silence, the emptiness. So, here we are, you and I, sitting beneath this vast, endless sky. And I want to leave you with this. The emptiness is not something to be feared. It is not a void to be filled. It is a space, a quiet, open space where you can breathe, where you can feel, where you can be. It is a space where the light enters you. And in that space, there's a universe of possibility waiting to be discovered. The stars above us are still scattered like shards of light, broken and beautiful. The air still carries the faint scent of earth and dew, and the night is still quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a hell breath. But now, it feels like we're breathing together. And that, I think, is where the story truly begins. Part 2. The light within the emptiness. As the night deepens, the stars seem to grow brighter, as if they're leaning in to listen. I want to tell you more, not because the story is over, but because it's still unfolding, still teaching me, still revealing itself in ways I couldn't have imagined. The journey of emptying my mind didn't end that night under the stars. It was only the beginning of a deeper understanding, a quieter wisdom that continues to grow. After that moment of clarity, I began to see emptiness not as an end, but as a beginning. It was like standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted ocean. At first, the expanse was intimidating, even frightening. But the more I stood there, the more I realized that the ocean wasn't something to conquer or control. It was something to explore, to be in relationship with. And so, I began to wade in. I started small. I would sit for just a few minutes each day, letting my thoughts come and go like waves. Some days, the waves were calm, and the stillness felt like an old friend. Other days, the waves were turbulent, crashing against the shores of my mind, and I would feel myself being pulled under by doubt, fear, or frustration. But I learned to ride those waves, to let them carry me without fighting against them. And in doing so, I discovered something remarkable. The waves always passed. The stillness always returned. It was in those moments of stillness that I began to hear my own voice, not the voice of expectations, or the voice of fear, or the voice of what I thought I should be, but the voice of who I truly was. It was soft at first, almost a whisper, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. And it told me things I had been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to hear. It told me that I was enough, just as I was, that I didn't need to prove myself to anyone, not even to myself, that my worth wasn't tied to my achievements, my productivity, or the approval of others. It told me that the emptiness I had been so afraid of was actually a gift, a space where I could reconnect with myself, with the world, with something greater than myself. One of the most profound lessons I learned was about the nature of inspiration. For so long, I had thought of inspiration as something external, something I had to chase or earn. I would wait for it to strike like lightning, and when it didn't, I would push myself harder, thinking that if I just worked long enough, hard enough, I could force it to come. But the truth is, inspiration isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. It's not a lightning strike. It's a quiet spark that comes from within. And it only comes when you create the space for it, when you empty your mind of all the noise, all the clutter, all the things that keep you from hearing your own voice. I remember the first time I experienced this kind of inspiration. I was sitting by a river, watching the water flow over the rocks. I wasn't trying to think of anything in particular. I was just there, fully present, fully open. And then, out of nowhere, an idea came to me. It wasn't a grand, earth shattering idea, but it was mine. It felt alive, like it had been waiting for me to notice it. And in that moment, I realized that inspiration had been there all along, waiting for me to create the space to receive it. Of course, the journey wasn't always smooth. There were times when I fell back into old patterns, when I let the noise of the world drown out the stillness within me. There were times when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was doing it wrong, if I was wasting my time. But even in those moments, I held on to the knowledge that the stillness was always there, waiting for me to return to it. In return, I did, again and again. Each time, I learned something new. Each time, I deepened my understanding of what it means to empty my mind, to let go, to be present. Each time, I found a little more light in the emptiness. Now, as I sit here with you under these stars, I realize that the journey never really ends. The emptiness is always there, waiting to be explored, waiting to teach me something new. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's beautiful because the emptiness isn't just a space. It's a mirror. It reflects back to us who we truly are, stripped of all the masks and illusions we wear. It shows us our fears, our doubts, our wounds, but also shows us our strength, our resilience, our capacity for love and joy. It shows us that we are not defined by our struggles, but by how we rise from them. And it reminds us that no matter how lost we may feel, we're always capable of finding our way back to ourselves. The moral, the gift of emptiness. So, what is the moral of this story? It's not a simple lesson, neatly wrapped in a bow. It's messy, just like life. But if I had to put it into words, it would be this: emptiness is not something to be feared or avoided. It is a gift, a space where we can let go of the things that no longer serve us and make room for the things that do. It is a place of healing, of discovery, of transformation. It is where we find our true selves and where we connect with something greater than ourselves. Toxic motivation, the kind that drives us to push ourselves to the brink, to measure our worth by our achievements, will always leave us feeling empty. But true inspiration, the kind that comes from within, will fill us with light. And that light is always there, waiting for us to notice it. So, if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling empty, I invite you to sit with it, to breathe into it, to trust that the emptiness is not the end, but the beginning, to know that in the stillness, you will find what you've been searching for. And when you do, you'll realize that the emptiness was never empty at all. It was always full, full of possibility, full of light, full of you. The stars above us seem to shimmer with approval, as if they've been waiting for me to say this all along. The night is still quiet, but now it feels alive, humming with the energy of shared understanding. And as we sit here together, I hope you feel it too, the quiet, unshakable truth that you are enough, just as you are. That the emptiness is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. And that, in the stillness, you will always find your way home. Part 3. The universe within. The night stretches on, and the stars seem to pulse with a rhythm that matches the quiet cadence of our conversation. I can feel the weight of your presence beside me. The unspoken understanding that we are both seekers, both travelers on this winding path of life. And so, I want to take you further, deeper into this story, because the journey of emptying the mind is not a destination. It's a continuous unfolding, a dance between light and shadow, between holding on and letting go. After that night by the river, when inspiration found me in the stillness, I began to see the world differently. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and everything around me seemed to shimmer with a quiet, hidden beauty. The ordinary became extraordinary. The mundane became sacred. A cup of tea in the morning wasn't just a routine. It was a ritual, a moment to pause and breathe. A walk in the park wasn't just exercise. It was an opportunity to connect with the earth, to feel the pulse of life beneath my feet. But this new way of seeing didn't come without its challenges. There were days when the noise of the world felt overwhelming, when the demands of life pulled me away from the stillness I had come to cherish. There were moments when I felt like I was losing myself again, slipping back into old habits, old patterns of thinking. And in those moments, I had to remind myself that the journey wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. It was about showing up again and again, even when it was hard. One of the most profound realizations I had during this time was that emptying the mind wasn't just about letting go of thoughts or distractions. It was about letting go of the stories I told myself, the stories about who I was, what I was capable of, what I deserved. These stories were like invisible chains, holding me back from fully embracing the present moment. And the only way to break free was to see them for what they were, just stories, not truths, not realities, but narratives I had constructed over time, often without even realizing it. Letting go of these stories wasn't easy. Some of them were so deeply ingrained that they felt like part of my identity. But as I began to release them, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known was possible. It was like shedding a heavy coat I had been wearing for years, not realizing how much it weighed me down. And with each layer I let go of, I felt lighter, more open, more alive. There's a metaphor I love, one that I return to often. The mind is like a cup of muddy water. When you stir it, the water becomes cloudy, and you can't see clearly. But if you let it sit, the mud settles, and the water becomes clear. Emptying the mind is like that. It's not about forcing the mud to disappear. It's about allowing it to settle so you can see what's beneath it. And what's beneath it? The universe, the infinite, boundless, luminous universe that exists within each of us. When we empty our minds, we create space for that universe to reveal itself. We begin to see that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply connected to it. That the same energy that flows through the stars, through the trees, through the rivers, flows through us. That we are, in every sense, part of something greater. This realization changed everything for me. It shifted the way I approached life, the way I interacted with others, the way I saw myself. I began to understand that the emptiness I had been so afraid of was actually a doorway to the infinite, to the divine, to the essence of who I truly was. And every time I stepped through that doorway, I felt a sense of peace, of wholeness, a belonging that I had never known before. But here's the thing: the doorway is always open. It's always there, waiting for us to step through. And we don't need to do anything special to find it. We don't need to climb a mountain or meditate for hours or achieve some lofty spiritual goal. All we need to do is be present, to breathe, to let go, to trust that the stillness within us is enough. The moral, the universe within. So, what is the moral of this part of the story? It's this: The emptiness you fear is not a void. It is the universe within you, waiting to be discovered. It is the space where you can let go of the stories that no longer serve you, where you can reconnect with the essence of who you truly are. It is the doorway to the infinite, to the divine, to the interconnected web of life that binds us all. Toxic motivation will always pull you away from this truth. It will tell you that you need to be more, do more, achieve more in order to be worthy. But true inspiration, the kind that comes from within, will remind you that you are already enough, that you are already whole, that you are already part of something greater. So, when you feel lost, when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel empty, remember this: the stillness is always there, waiting for you. The doorway is always open, and the universe within you is always shining, always guiding you home. As we sit here under these stars, I hope you can feel it, the quiet, unshakable truth that you are not alone, that you are part of something vast, something beautiful, something eternal, and that, no matter how messy or uncertain life may feel, there's always a stillness within you, a light that can never be extinguished. The night is still quiet, but now it feels alive with possibility. And as we breathe together, I hope you can feel the universe within you, pulsing with the rhythm of the stars, whispering the truth you've always known but may have forgotten: that you are enough, that you are loved, that you are home. Part 4: The Dance of Light and Shadow. The night has deepened, and the stars seem to have drawn closer, as if they, too, are leaning in to hear the rest of this story. There's a warmth in the air now, a sense of shared intimacy that comes from hours of quiet conversation. And so, I want to take you even deeper, to the heart of what it means to empty your mind, not as a one-time act, but as a lifelong practice, a dance between light and shadow, between holding on and letting go. After my realization about the universe within, I thought I had reached the end of the journey. I thought I had found the answer, the key to living a life of peace and inspiration. But life, as it often does, had other plans. It wasn't long before I found myself facing challenges that tested everything I thought I had learned. There were moments of doubt, moments when the stillness felt out of reach, when the noise of the world seemed too loud to overcome. There were times when I felt like I was back at square one, struggling to find my footing in the midst of chaos. And in those moments, I had to remind myself that the journey wasn't about avoiding the chaos, but about finding the stillness within it. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was that emptiness isn't a static state. It's not something you achieve and then hold on to forever. It's a dynamic, ever-changing process, a dance between light and shadow, between presence and distraction, between holding on and letting go. And like any dance, it requires practice, patience, and a willingness to stumble. I began to see that the moments of struggle, the moments of doubt, were not failures. They were part of the dance. They were the shadow that made the light shine brighter. They were the friction that made the stillness feel sweeter. And the more I embraced this idea, the more I began to see the beauty in the messiness of life. There's a story I love, one that has stayed with me through the years. It's about a Zen master who was asked by his student, "How do you maintain your peace and clarity in the midst of chaos?" The master replied, "I don't. I just notice when I've lost it, and then I come back." This simple yet profound answer became a guiding principle for me. It reminded me that the journey of emptying the mind isn't about achieving some perfect state of stillness. It's about noticing when you've lost it and then coming back. It's about the practice of returning again and again to the present moment, to the stillness within. One of the most transformative experiences I had during this time was during a particularly difficult period in my life. I was facing a series of personal and professional challenges that left me feeling overwhelmed and disconnected. I tried to meditate, to find the stillness, but my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I felt like I was failing at the very thing I had worked so hard to achieve. And then, one day, I decided to stop trying. I stopped trying to empty my mind, to find the stillness, to achieve anything at all. I simply sat down, closed my eyes, and allowed myself to be exactly as I was: messy, imperfect, full of doubt and fear. And in that moment of surrender, something incredible happened. The stillness found me. It wasn't the kind of stillness I had experienced before. It wasn't peaceful or serene. It was raw, real, alive. It was the stillness of acceptance, of allowing myself to be exactly as I was, without judgment or resistance. And in that stillness, I found a sense of peace that I hadn't known was possible. This experience taught me something crucial: that the journey of emptying the mind isn't about achieving a particular state. It's about being present with whatever state you're in. It's about embracing the messiness, the imperfection, the chaos, and finding the stillness within it. It's about trusting that the stillness is always there, even when it feels out of reach. The moral: the dance of light and shadow. So, what is the moral of this part of the story? It's this: the journey of emptying the mind is not a linear path. It's a dance between light and shadow, between presence and distraction, between holding on and letting go. And like any dance, it requires practice, patience, and a willingness to stumble. The moments of struggle, the moments of doubt, are not failures. They are part of the dance. They are the shadow that makes the light shine brighter. They're the friction that makes the stillness feel sweeter. And the more you embrace this idea, the more you begin to see the beauty in the messiness of life. So, when you find yourself in the midst of chaos, when the stillness feels out of reach, remember this: the journey isn't about avoiding the chaos. It's about finding the stillness within it. It's about noticing when you've lost it and then coming back. It's about the practice of returning again and again to the present moment, to the stillness within. As we sit here under these stars, I hope you can feel it, the quiet, unshakable truth that the stillness is always there, waiting for you. That the dance of light and shadow is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. And that, no matter how messy or uncertain life may feel, there's always a stillness within you, a light that can never be extinguished. The night is still quiet, but now it feels alive with possibility. And as we breathe together, I hope you can feel the universe within you, pulsing with the rhythm of the stars, whispering the truth you've always known but may have forgotten, that you are enough, that you are loved, that you are home. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you like the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.